Ireland, a country populated by just over 5 million people, is known for many things. Traditional song and dance, Gaelic sports like football and hurling, the gorgeous diverse landscapes, all are synonymous with the Emerald Isles, as is our chronic addiction to anything alcoholic. If you've ever listened to me, whether you figured it out from the accents or from my various web postings, you've probably caught on to the fact that I am Irish, and I am very passionate about our Rocket League community. That being said, when it comes to performances in the RLCS, Ireland's history is a bit of a mixed bag. With highs such as housing multiple World Championship caliber players, and lows such as going literal years without a shred of mainstream relevancy, I have seen it all. So, I figured to commemorate this St. Patrick's Day, I would take the time to inform the masses about how such a small country has had quite the journey in Rocket League esports. So with that all being said, Láféile Pádraig Sunagich, this is Ireland's interesting history in the RLCS. Starting with the player that most people watching are probably thinking of, it's Virtuoso. The best Irish player for the better part of 4 or 5 years at this stage, his claim to fame does not come from spending 3 seasons in Europe, but his move to Asia Pacific in late 2022, being the first EU to APAC import. Yes, our best player lives in Thailand, if you didn't know, but let's not act like he was never relevant in Europe to begin with. He was one of the last players to qualify to the RLCS during the League Play era, with Relating Wave and Nachito as the discombobulators, an exceptionally difficult feat for many of the era's top bubble players. RLCS Season 9 came along, and it is the forgotten season given the pandemic. Endpoint would sign the discombobulators and retain their RLCS spot, but it was unspectacular. The addition of Metsonaris in place of Nachito would lead to Endpoint showing glimpses of their potential as they placed third in the spring series, but Virtuoso managed to steal all the headlines as he broke out as a demo machine. Forget Rels, forget Com, Virtuoso's demos had a big impact on European servers over the years. Some argued it was overdone, and maybe you could make a case for it, but come RLCS X, Endpoint was actually kinda good. They struggled in the first 2 regional events of the season, but in Regional 3, they made an inspired run to the Grand Finals, where only Team Vitality would defeat them. They validated their good form with top 4 at the European Fall Major, and ended the split ranked 4th in Europe overall, but it unfortunately wouldn't last. The rest of the season produced just one 5th-6th placement to be proud of, with everything else being well outside the top 8, as Endpoint finished RLCS X as Europe's 10th ranked team overall. With Verse, while he remained a demo machine, there was a correlation with his least physical games being Endpoint's strongest performances overall, as seen in the fall split. Regardless, Endpoint saw an opportunity for improvement with Seiko and moved on from Virtuoso. And while Endpoint would have on the whole a successful RLCS 21-22 season, Virtuoso's was one to forget. He joined Solary for the fall split, and they only made the close qualifier stage once. 0 main event appearances. The rest of the season saw him join Tigray and Louis P on Na'Vi, and while it saw 4 out of 6 main event appearances, only one of them managed to break Europe's top 10. The rest were all winless, with Na'Vi placing last 3 times, and even failing to qualify for the main event twice. So with respect to Verse, it's probably fair to say his stock in Europe at the end of RLCS 21-22 wasn't that high. So he went to APAC and formed a super team. Virtuoso's stint in APAC thus far has been a major success. Being completely honest, when I first read the tweet announcing the James Cheese roster with Realize and fellow import Kami, I genuinely thought it was a joke. But no, it was anything but that. James Cheese, who quickly got signed by Elevate, became the standard bearers for APAC, with Virtuoso's level being exceptional by the region's standards, as he won the APAC regular season MVP award for RLCS 22-23. While their domestic form was never in doubt, it is internationally where Vert and Elevate became the Cinderella story of the season, as an inspired run through the 2023 World Championship wildcard saw them pick up wins over Europe's G1 and OCE's Pioneers, and come within 2 games of making the world's top 16 completely on merit. Team Secret would eventually be their foil, but when it was all said and done, an Irish player had recorded series wins at an RLCS LAN for the first time in 7 years, marking it as a modern high point in Ireland's RLCS history. However, it's not like the Irish hadn't had chances in those 7 years. Meet Maxeew, by general consensus, Ireland's second best player at the moment. He too participates in the APAC region, but not as an import, no. While born in Ireland, Maxeew has lived in Singapore since a young age, and thus has been a member of the Asian competitive scene since its infancy. By all accounts, he is an actual APAC player, not an import, even if the national flag would lead you to believe otherwise. Historically, even since the pre-RLCS era, his teams have tended to play second fiddle to whatever team Realize played on, especially once he formed 3 rats with LCT and, respectfully, a long list of turns that the duo cycled through. APAC's first RLCS season would see the region split into North and South, or in simpler terms, Japan and everyone else. This would allow Maxeew to notch up 8 RLCS regional wins that season, albeit events lacking in real competition, as come the APAC major qualifiers, Maxew's teams would falter to the superior APAC North squads. However, at the 3rd time of asking, Maxeew and LCT finally found the winning formula. With Indian third Abs Crazy and a permanent home in Gaming Gladiators, they would fend off the informed Detonator squad in 2 best of 7s to qualify for the 2022 Spring Major, giving Ireland RLCS LAN representation for the first time in 6 years. Now, them going out last place on LAN was unfortunate, but to be expected. This was still the first season for APAC in the RLCS, and a bracket pack consisting of G2 and Furia would make most teams sweat. But hey, at least they had the RLCS World Championship wildcard to show off their value to the world, and for Maxeew to fly the Irish flag on a global stage. Except, Abs Crazy had visa issues, so Gladiators had to play with a G2 sub, and they went out winless. Again. And with APAC being injected with the aforementioned imports ahead of RLCS 22-23, not even Gladiators' own import of OSM was enough to let the Gladiators keep up and fall. Just like before, it seemed Maxeew would be battling for best of the rest in RLCS 22-23. But Winter Split presented an opening. With Elevate getting upset in the semi-finals of the Winter Open by Detonator, it allowed Gladiators to gain a small advantage over Elevate, even if they couldn't close out the Grand Finals over Detonator. The Winter Cup would see Elevate strike back, but crucially, Maxeew and the Gladiators were still in the Grand Finals, meaning heading into the Winter Invitational, the 2 teams were tied on points. As fate would have it, Elevate and Gladiators would meet in the Grand Finals for a spot at the Major, and this time, Gladiators would stun the world, as OSM, LCT and Maxeew defeated the seemingly unbeatable.
Has an open field, run, it has the possession, it doesn't even matter if they score here, they just have to keep it up that end, and that is it. 2 seconds on the clock, no time left, Elevate are gonna go down, Gladiators become your 3rd Grand Final champion for the split, a different one for each one, and they secure the Major.
Aside from being a huge upset globally, Gladiator's Winter Major qualification really legitimized Maxeew as not just one of Ireland's best players by default since he plays in APAC, but truly capable on his day, as evidenced by his Grand Finals MVP showing. Okay, the RLCS LAN results still leave a lot to be desired, but the status quo went from best of the rest in APAC to one of the best in APAC. So when Realize and Virtuoso were looking for new turns for RLCS 2024, the choice was made pretty easy for them. Team up with Maxeew. Gladiator's RLCS roster is now Realize, Virtuoso and Maxeew, making it a primarily Irish team in the RLCS that is probably going to be a regular fixture at LANs going forward. As you will see later, Ireland's RLCS accolades is limited to mostly individuals, never a full team of 3. However, when I look at the Irish community at large, there isn't really a crazy amount of fanfare for Gladiators, or either of Vert or Max from last season. Whether it's time zones or APAC just being less competitive in general, the Irish scene is more likely to rally around and support Irish players actually playing in Europe. And there is a growing desire to one day see an Irish superstar not just become competitive, but be truly top tier in Europe and by proxy, the world. And there are a handful of Irish teams who have pushed on and gone up to a very respectable level in the European competitive scene. The first one, well, he doesn't say he's Irish, but he's lived here most of his life, he competes in Irish events and at Irish lands, and is a player who engages with the Irish community regularly. So even though he's Lithuanian, it would be asinine to make a video about Ireland in the RLCS without talking about Simas. As of the time of writing, Simas has made 5 European RLCS top 16/main events in his career across a variety of teams, and has been touted as one of the bubble players to watch for the future. His first main event appearance came in the spring split of RLCS 21-22, as after a lot of close qualifier heartache, he, Crispy and Acro finally broke through to make their first top 16 under Wild. At the start of RLCS 22-23, now signed to Endpoint CEX, he and Crispy ran it back, this time with the former world champion Devo to again make the top 16. Since then, there's been a small bit of roster instability, as is the case in the EU bubble, but Simas seems to have found a knack of making any new project work. Much Delight, consisting of Simas, Lhasa and Hibs, would qualify for the Winter Cup, and Fast Forward, being Simas, Compact and Metsonaris, would make the main event of the Spring Cup. That sounds great and all, especially by Irish standards, but unfortunately, across all those main events, Simas went winless. Thankfully, unlike Maxeew, he has finally broken his duck. As of the time of recording, the first open qualifier for RLCS 2024 has just taken place, and Fast Forward, now with HB instead of Metsonaris, won not just one, but 2 matches in the top 16, over 100% and Moist Esports no less, as Simas recorded a career best 9-11 placing in Europe. For Ireland's other main event appearance in the Open Circuit era, you'll have to go all the way back to RLCS X Winter Split in 2020, where Stealth 7 Esports, consisting of a pre-Godsmother's team of Chronic, Gnagflow, whose name is just Wolfgang spelled backwards, and Irish player Rob Kiernan would turn some heads. The trio made quite the unexpected run through the qualifier bracket, and found themselves in the 2014 main event, where they would take down Redemption as they placed a very respectable top 16. However, for Kiernan, he isn't really known for that one commendable main event run, but rather his time as a top 1v1 player. Yes, before deciding to seriously compete in Trees in 2020, Kiernan was very well known on the Ranked 1's leaderboard, and he's even applied his trade in Shiny Boy show matches at that. In regards to the RLCS, his activity has slowed down a bit over the years, but he still made the odd run deep into the open qualifiers. And with RLCS 2024, he has already found himself just one series off the top 16, still standing out among Irish talent in that regard. He, alongside the aforementioned three of Virtuoso, Maxeew and Simas, definitely form a big four in regards to Irish players here, who are all closer to each other in skill and stats than they are to anyone else below them. Well, I should say, if we count Smokez, it is a big 5. To touch on him briefly, he is from Northern Ireland, and has been a consistent fixture of the EU main events since RLCS 22-23. Teaming up with Matane and Arju as Monkeys, Luna Galaxy, Sonics, and more recently, Endpoint, making a couple of top 8s in the process. The issue in regards to this video is, irrespective of being from up north or not, because he's only ever played in one Irish event, the Irish community just doesn't tend to think about him in the same vein they do about Virtuoso or Simas or Maxeew or Kiernan when they're discussing the best Irish players. And no one seems to argue otherwise, so I won't either. But Smokez is a top talent. As you can probably tell, all the players mentioned so far have made their names in the modern era of RLCS, post-2020. What about before that? The League Play era, the 2010s? How good was Ireland in the RLCS before Virtuoso? To answer that, we're going to have to go backwards and reach into the depths of each season's European Open qualifiers and mention some names you've never heard of. Because before Virtuoso, Ireland was struggling to attain any relevance in the RLCS. Starting with RLCS Season 8, the same season Virtuoso's discombobulator qualified for the RLRS, it also saw probably one of the best runs ever from a 2/3 Irish roster, in the form of Drama Alert. Yes, Drama Alert, the same Twitter page and community that reported on all the petty beef and squabbles in the RL scene, actually had a team. As you can see, we're already off to a great start. The 2/3 Irish roster featured Adzer and Ryan, a known duo in the Irish scene who just had a knack for making an unexpected qualifier run. They would place 25th to 32nd in the European qualifiers, and before you start laughing and rolling your eyes, for any unestablished Irish player, that is a really good result. They didn't just do it once, however. Adzer and Ryan did it twice, having done the same in RLCS Season 7's Open qualifiers as well, proving their ability was no fluke. However, their Season 8 run was far more impressive, as they notably sent former and future Rival Series team Baguette Squad into the lower bracket in Upper Round 2. In RLCS Season 7, at the same time Adzer and Ryan got their first top 32, another Irish talent managed to go one round further. Pulse Fuser might ring a bell to some of you guys. Nowadays she goes by Drea, and is one of the more notable players competing in the Women's Carball Championship, most recently for Team Emishire. Back in Season 7, she, alongside fellow at the time Pulse Clan members Jazer and OSM, made a remarkable run to top 24 in the Season 7 Open qualifiers, where they would only be eliminated in Game 5 by Zenomoon, a team infamous for consisting of Zenzis, Nolly and Monkey Moon. Moving on to 2018, and this is really the dark ages for Ireland's RLCS efforts. There is just one result to note, and it came from Drea's duo in the Irish scene, Mug, or Dylan. He changed his name back and forth a bit. RLCS Season 5 would see him on the Kitman place top 48, and that is as good as it got. Although he was a notable enough fixture in the EU bubble scene at large, regularly popping up in the Renegade Cup events throughout 2018 and 2019. Why he's notable in regards to Irish Rocket League is he and Fuser/Drea owned RL Ireland tournaments for 2 years essentially. The duo teamed up for 7 Irish lands between 2018 and 2020, and won 5 of them. The 2 they didn't win, they still made the grand finals, and thus, RLCS or not, they were and are synonymous with Irish Rocket League history. Of course, they needed a strong third, and that came in the form of It's Pure Logic, who had multiple impressive RLCS runs in 2017 and 2016 that I don't even think the Irish scene is aware of. His worst qualifier runs were still a top 48 placing, which again, I must emphasize, is a flat out good result by Irish standards. At his peak though, we're talking about a player that was just 2 series of RLCS Season 3 league play when he placed top 16, and just 1 series of qualifying for the first ever RLCS league play as he placed top 12 in Season 1. Suddenly, Mug, Fuser and Logic by 2018 standards doesn't sound that crazy as the Irish super team. A special mention for this time period should also go to Dry, who also placed top 48 in Season 4's Open qualifiers. More significantly, however, is way back in the day, Dry was an elite level 1v1 player, having multiple memorable show matches on Johnny Boy stream and even nearly qualifying for the 12 Titans, only losing in the qualifier finals to Clay X. However, his 1v1 exploits actually helped bring about the revival of the Irish scene at the time, bringing a lot of exposure to the community that motivated people to help lay the groundwork that has since seen basically every player I've mentioned so far except Maxeew come through the RL Ireland tournaments at least once. So while Dry was far from the outright best Irish player, his influence had to be acknowledged. That all being said though, 2017, 2018, 2019, these guys were all quality players, but no league play qualifications. The fact I'm highlighting decent qualifier results as impressive should speak volumes to how low our standards are. And you know what? That just makes it all the more fascinating. That before all of this, before there was even an All Ireland or a sizable Irish community, an Irish player came and went as one of the best players in the world, and arguably the greatest this country has ever seen. Ladies and gentlemen, we gotta talk about Mike Rules. Mike is an enigma nowadays. The reality is he predates the Irish community so much, it's impossible to talk about him in the same brackets as everyone else. It's to the point where no one else is compared to him. His period of prominence makes it an impossible task. He's only ever played one Irish event, and that was towards the end of 2018, long past his glory days as a competitor. But those glory days are some of this esports' original fans' fondest memories. If you're unaware, from basically the start of Rocket League in July 2015 up to the end of the first World Championship in August 2016, Mike Rules was on Flipside Tactics with Marky Duda and Cooks497. And they were not just the best team in the world, but one of the greatest of all time. Talent-wise, they had 3 of the top 5 most skilled players in the game at the time, including Mike Rules. How good Mike was does get forgotten, given once he departed, Flipside finally won the World Championship in Season 2. But even then, you could argue that at that first World Championship, Mike was Flipside's star man. Regardless of how brief his run was, the amount of accolades he racked up still meant for a great career. He won the first ever EU RLCS Regional. He placed top 2 at the first ever RLCS World Championship. Hell, he even won the first ever international major in the MLG Pro League, and got another top 2 in the RLC Pro League. All while individually standing head and shoulders above basically everyone that wasn't his teammates, Cronovi, or We Them Girls. The contrast of his success compared to the next best Irish player over the next 4 years only making decent qualifier runs, it's quite bizarre, but it is also understandable. The quote-unquote revival of RL Ireland didn't happen until December of 2017, by which point Mike Rules wasn't exactly competing anymore. Even then, post Flipside, he still made attempts at qualifying for the RLCS, with varying degrees of seriousness, and he was still often the standout Irish player. Top 12 in Season 2, top 24 in Season 3, top 32 in Season 4, well clear of many of the other players I have mentioned. In making and researching this video, and charting everyone's qualifier runs over the years, it was interesting to notice that there's basically been a negative correlation between Ireland's RLCS success and the happiness and activity of the All Ireland community. Like, right now is probably the most relevant Ireland has been internationally, with Gladiators, with Smokez, with Simas. But like in 2016 with Mike Rules, respectfully, the actual All Ireland community hasn't had the best of times recently. All the while, the so-called glory days of All Ireland being 2018 through 2021 had either no Irish success in the RLCS, or very sporadic success with Virtuoso and Kiernan's one main event appearance. Speaking as a member and a product of the Irish community, it really feels like there's a separation between Ireland and the RLCS and the actual Irish community itself, and I really struggle to make that distinction. Like, if we took a step back, every year since 2017 has had something to be positive about and proud of as an Irish Rocket League fan. But to be fair, to be Irish is to be self-deprecating and pessimistic. It is literally in our blood. But the fact I can take a step back and say so much about Ireland in the RLCS as evidenced by the length of this video, that's pretty cool. Given when I first joined the Irish community, I was surprised there were any grand champions, let alone multiple people trying to go pro and actually making an okay attempt at it. I hope people have found this cool to watch. There are so many other players I wish I could have gone into depth about. Old school Irish players like Docky, Red Eyes and Arctic. One of the greatest PS4 players ever in Ineffable, not just in Ireland, but up there with Atomic, Abject and Monkey Moon in his prime in the PS4 days. Ineffable is a huge what if here. And also more modern standouts like Panda, like Shane, and especially the Southeast Technological University, aka SETU, who qualified for the 2023 Collegiate Rocket League World Championship. That being Solo, Tomster, and especially Shallow. I mentioned the big 4 Irish players earlier. If we extended that to a big 5, Shallow is right up there with the best of them. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this extra long St. Patrick's Day special video and you've made it to this point, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. All the support I've gotten on this first year of YouTube has been very nice and I really appreciate it. I promise more content is on the way. Until the next time, take care and peace.